Look, I know what you're thinking. No plugin can actually do the work for you. Trust me, I thought the same. But then I tried these, and they don't just help. They borderline finish the job. Skeptic or not, you need to see this. Having plugins do the work for you comes with a cost, and many of these are not going to be free, but let's start with one that is. Have you ever heard a song and thought, damn, that kick is amazing. I wish there was just some way I could quickly isolate it because then I'd use it and drop it in my own song. Rare DSP Drum Clone. It can quickly and cleanly sample kicks for free. Now go hit that thumbs up if you didn't know about this until right now. Okay, this next batch of plugins will make you a lazy genius. This first one is Sonable Smart Comp. It applies spectral compression where needed, and it does a really nice job of controlling dynamics without like over compressing or giving you that pumping sound. So how it works, you're going to choose the source type, like if it's vocals or drums, and that'll help it in terms of adapting to the input signal. And once it finishes, you still have full control over all of the parameters you might want to tweak: attack, release, ratio. Here's a quick example of what it sounds like.
In my fingertips, where I want you, so come on, let me lead you on. In my fingertips, where I want you, so come on, let me lead you on.
Now, Waves IDX is a bit simpler to use as it has this one knob approach, but you can still control things like the speed, the knee, or what frequencies it will prioritize. So this one is a bit more beginner friendly, but it still sounds great. And while on topic here, Waves does have this entire one knob series where you can control things like distortion, sidechain, filtering, all through one knob. Very easy to use. Now, before we get into some of the goats that will literally mix your track for you, I want to give you some tools and resources to help you generate song ideas. Starting with the free options, Hook Theory is a website that breaks down the chords and melodies of like 60,000 plus songs. And it's sick because if you knew nothing about piano, you can see the notes and hear exactly what these progressions sound like. Then you can literally just go remake it in the DAW. Chord is another site where you give it a prompt and you could say like the key and the feeling you want. It will literally print out the chord progression for you, which you can then bring into the DAW. Now let's move over to some plugins. These are not free, they will cost some money. Scalar and Captain Chords are two plugins that can generate melodies, chord progressions for you. And what's cool about these that differentiates it from just using the websites, you can actually run your synths and sounds through these chords and melodies that they're creating. Okay, so then you might be good with melodies, but you suck with drums. Check these out because they're wild. XO and Atlas 2.5 are very similar in what they do. Think of them as like an AI organized sample browser and drum sequencer. They're gonna analyze and map your sample library visually by timbre and sound. Then they match samples that sound similar, that would work well together, and then create grooves and loops for you to use based on those sound sets. It's wild. So then XLN went one step further and created this plugin called Life. This allows you to record shit off your phone, import it into the plugin, and it will create drum loops from it. So here's a recording of Moose drinking water turned into a drum loop. I've got one more, and this is the one you want to save in your back pocket. When you have nothing left, no creativity, the worst writer's block in the world. After being served like 8 million ads for this plugin, I finally caved and tried Output Arcade. And yo, I could not have been more impressed. This thing was literally like Splice on steroids. It's an entire sample-based library covering any and everything you can imagine sound-wise, genre-wise. But you can mangle loops in seconds. You could transpose them to whatever key your song is in, and it sounds amazing. You could play their own instruments on your MIDI keyboard. I do use this a lot because I always found Splice requires more work. Like, you're gonna sound like everyone else using that loop unless you just do a lot to it to make it very different. Arcade makes that exact process 10 times faster and 10 times easier. Moving on, let's talk about one of my favorite plugins, and this one is just so good at doing what it does. What you do is drop it on one sound, set the sidechain to be the other that you want to align the phase with, and here's an example of what it would sound like. Now, once you've set the sidechain, you could also have Fuser find the competing frequencies between those two sounds, and it'll automatically do some dynamic ducking. So this next plugin you might be familiar with, as it does a very similar thing, and that's Track Spacer. Yes, it could duck the one sound around the other just like Fuser, but I also want to mention that if you click this button here, it'll open this back panel, and a lot of people don't realize this, but it lets you switch into a mid-side mode if you want. You could even edit things like the attack and release settings. Before moving on to some of the crazier mixing ones we have on this list, I want to mention, if any of you ever want more than these videos, like something more personalized, Justin and I sitting down with you, helping you develop your specific brand, helping you improve your music, there will be a comment pinned below on this video where you can apply to work with us. Okay, if you ever want a reverb custom and specific to your sound, Isotope's Neoverb is really, really cool. What you do is give it some of the characteristics you're looking for, and then it will create a custom reverb that fits your sound. And it'll even EQ the reverb based on your original signal's frequency content. You also still get to control all the important parameters a control freak might want to control like myself, so I do reach for this quite often. It's a nice best of both worlds kind of plugin. Sticking with ear candy plugins, you might know these two, but always worth mentioning. Transit and Endless Smiles are awesome tools that can quickly group several common effects together. They've become like production staples for build-ups, transitions. Lift Effects is another one that can quickly create uplifters and downlifters all synced to your BPM. So you could edit things like the pitch, the rhythm, the timbre. It even allows you to create quick and easy white noise sweeps, which is cool. Then let's talk about one of the most underrated plugins for ear candy. We tend to think of Shaperbox as just a sidechain plugin, but it is so much more than that. I'm always using this thing for ear candy as it can combine so many different modules like panning, time shifting, filtering, and much, much more. And the presets are actually incredible. Like, I will just put it on a sound and start rifling through, and it does things that I would never think about doing on my own. Okay, let's get to the good stuff, and let's talk about the plugins that are gonna help us with things like EQ and cleaning up our sounds. Sonable Smart EQ, Gullfoss, Soothe 2, Smooth Operator, these are all similar and all sound incredible. They're able to identify resonances, tonal imbalances, masking, and automatically adjust them accordingly. I always find these great because they're not drastic. You're never gonna get that ice cream scoop shape and sound when you over EQ something. And obviously we can't go without rolling out the red carpet for FabFilter Pro Q4. As if they couldn't have made Pro Q3 any better, they rolled out several new features which are extremely helpful. My favorite feature they added was the spectral EQ, and that's because it took the regular dynamic EQ to a whole new level, because now it can move with your signal. So like if you have a vocal or a synth changing in notes, it can move left to right with those notes rather than remaining stationary. Now you can also use all of those plugins I just mentioned in sidechain mode, where one sound will duck around the other. Think of a regular sidechain compressor. It's going to duck the entire signal around the trigger, where these will only duck the competing frequencies around the trigger. That's going to be way more transparent for your mix. Okay, so let's go back to free plugins, and this time we're talking stereo imaging. So what these will do for you, they will make your sound wide, but more importantly, they do it while still retaining mono compatibility. You might be familiar with Ozone Imager 2 and Wider. These are a bit more popular, but Basslane is one that's really useful too. This is a little bit different because it's going to add width to your bass layers, but it does it through added harmonics. So it will sound wide in stereo, but it still sounds perfect in mono. As you begin to finalize your mix, take advantage of a Match EQ plugin. I'm using the Isotope version here, but there are others out there. The concept is you can feed it a target. Think of this as like a reference track. It'll understand that song's frequency balance and then compare it to yours. Now the plugin will want you to EQ your mix to sound like the reference, but I wouldn't recommend using it that way. Instead, just take it as information. It's gonna guide you to the areas where you might have too much or too little, and then you could just go back to your mix and address it by finding those sounds that are too loud or too quiet. So now you wanna throw a master chain on this great mix, but you don't know where to start. Master Plan is one of these like all-in-one plugins that simplifies all the different steps that go into achieving the final bit of tonal balance, dynamic control, overall loudness. Now, if you're a fan of Plugin Alliance and you want a little bit more control, they have the BX Master Desk. You could see this has a ton of customization in all the different sections and modules. Probably not for the total beginner, but at the same time, I feel like you could learn a lot about mastering through a plugin like this. Then there's also the Ozone Mastering Suite, which is really funny because they market it to two completely different types of producers. There's the total beginner who just wants the AI assistant to master their entire track, which it will. But then their plugins are also marketed to the experienced producer who really understands how deep this thing can go. The quality of Ozone stuff is tops. It's among the best. So let's see then what it thinks this master chain for my song should be. So you can see, it's trying. And I hope you're realizing that with most of these plugins here, although they do the work for you, you still need to guide them and make sure they're doing it correctly, or make sure they're doing what's best for your song, because sometimes they can't quite understand that. So if you liked this video, YouTube is super smart. They're gonna pop up another one right now that you would probably like too. So tap that, I'll meet you over there. There's always more we could talk about.